Iran just shocked the world with what they are building. But almost nobody is talking about how. Against crushing sanctions, Tehran is pouring billions into a deep-sea port at Chabahar and a 1,500-kilometer transit corridor that slashes trade times between India and Russia by 40%. This is more than construction. It is a blueprint to break out of isolation, challenge the old maritime routes, and turn Iran into Eurasia's must-cross bridge. The stakes? $14 billion gas fields, entire cities re-engineered by metro tunnels, and high-tech hydropower deals reshaping Central Asia. But with every milestone comes a new front: land disputes, environmental threats, and the risk of debt spiraling out of control. So just how far can this gamble push Iran? And what might it cost? Chabahar's docks stretch out into the Gulf of Oman, lined with cranes and fresh concrete poured by the hour. Iran has poured $1 billion into the first phase alone, aiming for a port that can handle 8 million tons of cargo per year. The plan is bold: a 2,000-meter quay, a free trade zone, and a direct rail link north to Zahedan, turning Chabahar into the country's new commercial front door. For Tehran's port authority chief, this is more than just steel and shipping lanes. Every new vessel is proof that sanctions can be outmaneuvered, that Iran can anchor itself into the flow of Eurasian trade. But the promise of jobs and commerce comes with a cost. The land beneath these cranes once belonged to Baluch fishermen and small farmers, many of whom now find themselves edged out by security fences and resettlement orders. Compensation packages have lagged, and local petitions pile up in the regional courts. Tensions have flared in Sistan-Baluchistan, with reports of forced evictions and protests met by a heavy security presence. For the Baluch community, the port's expansion is a double-edged sword, offering the hope of new work, but also the risk of losing ancestral land and livelihoods. As the first cargo ships docked at the new berth in late 2023, the stakes became clear. Chabahar is not just a port. It's a test of whether mega-projects can deliver both national ambition and local justice. The next phase depends on the rail link, but for now, the battle lines run along the waterfront itself. Freight trains rolling out of Chabahar's new yards head straight for the backbone of Iran's Eurasian ambitions: the North-South Transport Corridor. Spanning 1,500 kilometers of track and tarmac, this $3 billion network is engineered to cut the journey between India and Russia by nearly half, shaving transit time from 40 days on the Suez route down to just 20 to 24 days. For railway planners in Tehran, the numbers are the real headline. Every container that skips the Red Sea means a 30% drop in freight costs and up to $3 billion in new logistics investment by 2030. But the promise of speed comes with its own set of headaches. At the Astara border, the tracks don't match. Standard gauge in Iran, broad gauge in Azerbaijan and Russia. Each train must be unloaded and reloaded, sometimes waiting 2 days for the swap. Freight insurers, wary of delays and sabotage threats, insist in Baluchistan, price in extra risk premiums. Customs paperwork piles up at every junction, thanks to mismatched tariffs and the lack of a unified digital system. Despite the bottlenecks, the corridor is already drawing attention from Indian, Russian, and Central Asian shippers looking to bypass Turkish and Pakistani routes. Iran's own officials boast that the corridor will create 20,000 jobs in rail and logistics. For every wagon that makes it from the Gulf to the Caspian, Iran is staking its claim as a continental bridge, no longer just a port gatekeeper, but a critical link in the world's newest trade highway. South Pars is where Iran bets its future on gas. This offshore giant sits in the Persian Gulf, stretching over 3,700 square kilometers, bigger than the city of Los Angeles. Phases 11 through 24 alone represent a $14 billion gamble, designed to pump out an extra 50 billion cubic meters of gas every year. That's enough to supply 60% of Iran's domestic demand and feed a petrochemical export machine worth up to $8 billion annually. But the story here isn't just about scale. Out on the rigs, Crews work 12-hour shifts in the shadow of a 140-meter flare stack. A torch so tall, it's become the symbol of Iran's energy ambitions. For the engineers, every shift is a race against time and equipment shortages. Sanctions mean spare parts arrive late, or not at all. In April 2022, a methane blowout on Phase 16 triggered a 12-hour emergency. Shift logs and radio traffic capture the chaos. Alarms blaring, evacuation orders, and a narrow escape before the platform was stabilized. Post-incident audits revealed corners cut on safety checks, with pressure to keep output high despite the risks. Every cubic meter of gas comes at a cost. The flare stack burns off methane that can't be captured, sending plumes of greenhouse gases into the sky. Offshore workers speak of pride and exhaustion. 25,000 jobs depend on these platforms, but so does Iran's energy debt. The stakes are clear. If South Pars keeps running, it powers the country's economy and its next wave of megaprojects. But one bad day on the rigs, and the whole system is exposed. High in the Tajik mountains, concrete pours day and night at the Rogun Dam site. Iran's engineers, working under a $2 billion contract, have delivered turbines powerful enough to light up 3 countries. 3,600 megawatts at full output, with 2 units already spinning since 2023. This isn't just about keeping the lights on in Dushanbe. Rogun is built to sell electricity south, where Afghanistan and Pakistan face chronic shortages. The numbers are staggering. Over $1 billion a year in projected export earnings once all 6 turbines are online. But the real leverage comes from the contract's fine print. If Tajikistan can't pay cash, Iran takes its share in electricity revenue, locking in a pipeline of hard currency and regional influence. Procurement hasn't been straightforward. Sanctions forced Iran to route control systems and key turbine parts through Belarusian and Malaysian intermediaries, with payments sometimes made in raw aluminum or rare metals instead of dollars. For project managers in Dushanbe, the dam is a lifeline. For local ecologists, it's a threat. The reservoir has already submerged valleys that once held rare woodland and the last breeding grounds of the Tajikistan snow trout. International studies warn of a 9% loss in local forest and the displacement of over 1,000 families. Mitigation plans, like fish passes and reforestation, are in place, but satellite images confirm steady deforestation and silt buildup. NGOs argue the damage may be permanent, while officials point to the promise of regional grid stability and winter power independence. Rogun is now a bargaining chip in Central Asian diplomacy, powered by Iranian turbines and paid for, in part, with the promise of electricity crossing new borders. Beneath Tehran's crowded streets, the city's newest lifeline stretches further every month. Lines 6 and 7 now add over 70 kilometers of track, carrying nearly 1 million riders each day, enough to fill the world's largest stadium 20 times over. For Parvaneh Rahmani, a morning commuter and young engineer, these tunnels are more than just a way to work. They're proof that Iranian cities can keep moving, even when sanctions choke off foreign parts and funding. The expanded metro isn't just about convenience. Each train cuts into the city's notorious smog, saving around 1 million tons of CO2 every year. In 2022, Nasim Rasooli became the first woman to lead a tunneling crew on Line 7's southern extension, breaking a gender barrier and inspiring a new wave of engineers. Here, resilience rides the rails alongside ambition. Iran's gamble on mega-projects comes with a price tag few countries would dare shoulder. Economists tracking the numbers see more than ambition, they see exposure. The combined debt for these headline builds now exceeds 10% of the annual budget, a figure that climbs higher with every cost overrun or delay. Municipal bonds tied to the Tehran metro are already straining local finances, with watchdogs warning of default risk if revenues fall short. Energy-backed loans for South Pars and Rogun lock future export earnings into debt service. Regional strategists warn that new infrastructure ties could turn into new dependencies. especially if trade partners or energy buyers gain leverage over repayment terms. The stakes are clear. If the projects deliver, Iran could break free of isolation. If not, the burden could pull the country deeper into economic quicksand. Iran has invested over $25 billion in megaprojects since 2018, aiming to turn sanctions into opportunity. The Chabahar port and 1,500-kilometer INSTC corridor cut freight times by 40%, positioning Iran as a key Eurasian bridge. South Par's gas phases now meet 60% of domestic demand and drive $8 billion in annual exports, while the Rogun partnership is projected to generate $1 billion in cross-border electricity sales. Yet, more than 10% of national and municipal budgets are now tied up in infrastructure debt, and environmental and social challenges remain unresolved. Key project files, including full metro bond disclosures and Rogun resettlement agreements, remain classified. As of mid-2024, the outcome is uncertain. Iran could secure new revenue and influence, or face deeper strain if ambitions outpace resources. What is clear from the evidence is that these builds are reshaping regional trade, energy, and urban life, making Iran's infrastructure gamble one of the most consequential in its modern history.